What are your thoughts then? Let's do the rogue angle then. So come on then, Youngbuck. Right, did you have a similar vibe to us? Did you think that Rogue was winning the final? Was it dependent on who they played? I mean, I have to say, I won't lie. As soon as G2 made the final, I actually thought it was going to be even easier for Rogue. I thought they were just going to cleanly win the final. So what were your expectations for them coming in? Had they shown you enough to make you believe they could win?
Yeah, I drank the Kool-Aid after they beat Fnatic, and I thought that they overcame a lot of their choking issues.
Same.
And now
or they got us all.
Now after the finals, I'm thinking, wait a minute, are they still choking, but did Fnatic just implode on them?
Something to think about, right? Yeah.
I don't think that Rogue showed that they overcome all their choking issues. I think they still have that question to answer next split.
I just wonder how they're gonna get us even worse, because they've already got reverse swept in a final. They've already dominated they've like did a massive comeback in a winners semifinal, then gotten to the final. Or I guess it was winners final, and then gotten to a final. And you know, you had hope there. So like, what's gonna happen? Are they gonna literally just win LEC, and then slowly you're gonna see them all just like take off the mask, and it's actually just Fnatic under the mask the whole time? It's like, holy shit, I knew it was a different team. Like, how do you get even fucking closer than this? Like, at this point, I don't know how I could ever believe in Rogue again.
I know. Problem is, I said that last split, Dom. I said it last split. I promised to myself, you know, I'm off that shit. You know, it's in the past. The problem is, like I said on my other show, they are just fucking KT Roguester. This is like the KT roaster of Europe. It's mental. Because the problem is, right, Youngbuck, like, it's one thing, you know, that old famous saying, it's like, you know, you fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. It's like, well, I'm getting fooled 5 times if I go in again. Like, I'm not going to do it. I just know that they're going to win the most games in the split, and then they're going to have one nice playoff series, and then all of a sudden, you know, you'll start thinking, oh, maybe they've learned from their lessons and stuff. Because actually, I have to say, what fucked their narrative is, you nailed it, you just touched on it lightly, because Fnatic also then shit the bed in this lower bracket. Now it doesn't look as epic that they beat them in the upper. You know, the whole point is, if Fnatic was like the secret best team, like that everyone was implying, you know, then it would be epic if you did the comeback against them, and then you beat them properly. I'm sort of with you. The way Fnatic lost in the lower, unfortunately, it sort of does sap a bit of the win. I'll give the analogy. It's like in the UFC, if you're fighting another contender, but then right afterwards he loses to a complete bomb and he's out of the rankings, it sort of steals a bit of the shine of your win. You know, you want your resume to be based on them being all killers, right?
That's also why everyone in post-game interviews always hypes up their opponent, because it just shows how much better they are and how great they are.
Yeah,
true.
I mean, I think Rogue, it's just like, I could have taken it if they like had bad drafts the first 2 games, and then game 3 when G2 had that like horrible, that, oh my god, like that whole, like, that was probably the worst 5 minutes that you could have opening. When your AD carry comes to lane 0-3 and he's level 1 at like 5 minutes and 20 seconds, the game's probably doomed. Like, that's a remake angle in scrims. Like, there's just no point in playing that one out. Like, you just lost the whole game at level 1.
She looked like the games they were having against Fnatic, if you remember, when they just snowballed them so early. You thought, like, oh, it's going to be easy to win this game.
Yeah, definitely. So, like, I could have taken it if, like, you know, G2 has 2 better drafts than them, game 1 and 2. Game 3, G2 has, like, a bad early game, and they end up losing that game. And then the 4th game, you know, they just beat him again by having a better draft. I would have been like, damn, like, Rogue, like, it's not even that you really choked. It's just that they showed up fucking huge, and Caps was in God mode, and your prep wasn't there. But I don't, like, put it on the players choking. But that game 3 just was like, come on, like, how many times did Odo get his flash burned / solo killed by Ornn? Like, 4 times in one game? Like, come on, man. Like, BB's Ornn is good. We talked about BB's Ornn last week. It's not that good. Like, if you're playing a good Jace, it can't be that good. It's not possible. If it is, then Ornn is the best champion in the game. Literally, B won it every single fucking time. It has no counters, right? So in this game, it was like, I don't know what happened to Rogue, but they looked so fucking mentally defeated. If you watch the game and you see just like the movements by Rogue, they're panicked and they're up 4K. It's like you can tell by the fights they're taking and by like the micro within the fights that they're all like so on edge. When they have complete control of the game, they're winning hard and it feels like they're losing in the game. It's just like you're waiting for G2, just like old G2, to actually come back and win. It's like, oh, how is G2 going to work their way out of this one? That's the vibe of the entire game. So for me, like, that 3rd game was just like, I think the prep was really bad. I was really not liking giving over the Aria. I mean, I also think it was one of those things where it's like, dude, like, Rogue, you were winning games by going red side, right? Like, you went red side, and that's like how you started taking over. I was down for some red side. Like get counter pick support. It seems really fucking OP, right? And it like just match the mid jungle, get counter pick support, maybe just ban away the Ahri or something, and let one of the other players carry the game. If Caps is the one beating you, give Flockid Zeri or something and make Flockid carry the game on something like that. Like I wanted to see some type of adaptation, but I thought the adaptations were really weird. And then that game 3 was just a classic Rogue choke. Like that's just the one where you're like, I hate you, Rogue. I hate you for doing this to me, you motherfuckers. Like,
along those lines, actually, Youngbuck, I want to ask about the draft of Rogue, because one of the interesting things was, like Dom said, they only ever went to red side every time their back was against the wall, and that was like the smash in case of emergency and take out the fire extinguisher. So essentially, they implied from these series, they believe blue is stronger, at least for them as a team. And I actually noticed from talking a bit behind the scenes, they also actually think, technically, blue should be the strongest side. And like in history, it nearly always is. But that for some weird reason, I mean, what would your explanation be as to why red seemed like the one that would win in these series or was giving you the edge?
I don't know, but I feel like I have to defend Rogue a little bit there, because if you have side selection and you don't pick blue and you lose, there is no worse feeling, because when you go blue, you basically choose what your draft is going to be and your opponents have to adapt. So you can, because you know your opponents have 3 bans, so you only need to prepare 4 first picks around which you're going to draft. So also blue has a big advantage in terms of the map. So you know that you want, like, picking red side and losing, that feels really stupid as a coach. So whenever if it's a close decision, it's not actually a close decision. You always go blue side. There has been a patch earlier in the season where red side was really good, because there were like there was a really and there was like a full like a 1 S tier champion in 3 different roles. So it was very easy to trade 1 for 2.
Right.
And then I felt like on this patch that wasn't really the case. I think there was just more of like, do you play Hecarim, Volibear? Do you care about TF or Ahri? So I think theoretically, red side shouldn't be better unless you... the benefit is just the last pick, and usually teams that are like at the highest level, if they go red side, they want to counter pick support. So I can see that being the angle. Other than that, blue is just superior in a lot of ways, and I don't think that they lost because of the side selection.
Right.
I mean, I think that the side selection is just an issue when you're letting them have like their strongest picks on red side. So like for me, it's like, okay, if you want to go blue, like at least like ban Ahri or something and give them Xayah, because it's like, I mean, what do you think is going to be more of an issue? I feel like it's always easier to play against something like a Xayah than play against something like an Ahri. I mean, obviously it depends. If you have a full comp that needs to dive the enemy AD carry and they pick Xayah and your whole comp is just shit because of that, that's obviously not good. But I would rather them give the Xayah to Flockid, who had like some good games, some bad games. You saw in the series before, like when Flockid was playing Xayah into GP, it looks actually impossible. Like it actually looks like the Xayah can't play the game when playing against something that has like super long range, drops ult on you, like you can't really move. So for me, I mean, I guess you can go blue, but like their blue side draft, like you said, you're gonna be able to prepare, and it's not like they're getting surprised by the Ahri. They just thought that their team comp was a counter, and I just don't really see, like, after reviewing it, how that team comp is supposed to deal with the Ahri. I guess it's just supposed to be Lucian dominates mid lane, like you just push it into turret, but I don't even know what your plan is to do, like, with the mid lane prio. Like, maybe you invade topside jungle with, like, mid and top prio because you have a rumble on your team as well. Maybe that's something that you can do with it. It just seems like it's a much harder win condition than what they could have potentially opted for.
What's go on, mate.
Just specifically on the Ahri, because historically, and Dom might know this because it's season 2, season 3 material, whenever Ahri was in the meta, it was against squishy junglers, squishy top laners, usually range supports, and it always fell out of meta, even when it was strong, when there were tanky junglers, tanky top laners. So if you're going to give the Ahri, just lock in the Ornn, lock in a Jarvan, because Ahri does not have the DPS to handle these champions. But we didn't really Lucian Rumble. It doesn't make any sense.
Was the Rumble itself was that a bit egregious? Because obviously he picked it previously, but then they won the game, so it was like, wow, what a genius! It's his pocket pick. I think that was for game 1.
I like that. I like the pick in isolation, not into the Ahri, but I just like the pick for Odo just into the champion pool that BB's playing, because a lot of the champions that BB would play, for example, the Tryndamere, which he selected in this game, like from what I've heard, Rumble is actually good in that matchup because Rumble can actually kite the Tryndamere with the double E. So I actually thought that Odo actually played really well that game. I think that was the game where he was playing better than BB throughout most of it, but it was just, I just didn't like the prep in that game. I just don't think that there was enough CC for the Ahri in general. So it was kind of weird. I wasn't a fan of that. And then game 2, like the draft, I don't like the. I'm a big hater of double AP, but like triple AP, where it's like, I mean, Volibear is obviously part physical damage, but as the game progresses, like your percentage damage comes from your E, which is AoE magic damage, and your ult is magic damage. And the longer the game goes, you're not sitting there with Volibear getting a million W's off on somebody's face over and over, especially if you're going full tank and things like that. So for me, like the second game draft looked like another one where it's like, I don't understand how you're supposed to win this game.
Sure.
So
I
yeah,
will
I
say,
just wasn't a fan of the blue side prep.
Just as a note on the first game, one thing you have to admit about the draft from G2 is there's zero universe in which Rogue ever had a whiteboard that had a comp on it, Youngbuck, that said Trymbi, Ari, and fucking Misfortune. Like, there's no world in which they thought that was a game one draft. So that even applies to me. Dylan Fackel's trying to throw you a bit of a curveball in game one and sort of maybe even see what your strong picks are, test you out a little bit. Because I get the vibe Rogue does the opposite, mate. Rogue feels like in the first games of series, they just draft just for themselves, whatever they think works in practice. And then it's only basically if you beat them that they try and adapt eventually. And even then, they only seem to adapt at the last minute when it's like the emergency. What do you think about this? Because this has obviously been one of the things that people are also talking about with Rogue. It's like the one thing that's been constant is they've had a similar coaching staff the whole time they've had these issues in playoffs. So is there something about how they're working? Because obviously we see every time in the regular split, it's amazing. It's a really good approach. But somehow in playoffs, what is it about the nature of a playoff series that this approach doesn't work the same way?
I have to say I don't know. I just don't know. But I do want to add on the point about maybe trying a draft or throwing a draft at them. And I don't think Dylan is the type of person that does that. He is very methodical, and he's not someone that likes to take risks. He is someone who will see opportunities for specific champions in moments, but I think that I am very confident to say that he out-prepped Rogue and knew everything that was going to happen. And I think Rogue would probably not see some of the 1-2s coming, and then they had to adapt on the fly and didn't know that certain champions were good against Ari. So I think it's more that G2 knew what they were going to do from start to finish. I don't think Misfortune was a big surprise either. It didn't show in our scrims.
In scrims?
It didn't show in our scrims, but there was word of Misfortune running around in some other scrims, and we saw it in a few player solo queues. So this is not something that was too surprising. But Flacket actually went during the tryouts with G2. This was actually the Misfortune. And I want Misfortune meta, and I forgot the other champion. I think it could have been. It was World's meta. It was Misfortune was much in the meta, and this champion got flagged a spot on G2, so he probably felt a lot of faith in just playing it.
Right. Yeah. So I thought. So I mean, I think that makes it even more egregious. I was about to defend Rogue there and say, well, they probably didn't know that much about the Misfortune, and they thought if they banned out the Xayah and like Zeri was banned, they were going to force Flocket into like an Aphelios Jinx matchup, which it seemed like that would give comp a better advantage to like win bot lane. And so yeah, that just throws that one out the window. So now the Misfortune is also agreed. Perfect. The draft was terrible from start to finish. Like there was nothing good about it. Like perfect. We can move on.
By the way, being as obviously I've hyped him up over the split, I did think in this finals Larssen was pretty shit. He just did nothing. He just did nothing and died. That's it.
Yep.
What more do you want?
The TF game was just like the TF game was so sad because
sad one, yeah.
Okay, number one, like maybe they mistimed Flocket's ulti, but there was like one where they were like 4v1. Flocket had no cleanse, no ulti, and they just didn't dive him. He had a Braum stack on him. I was like, come on, it's 4v1, just dive the guy. They must have thought he had ulti, so they just mistimed that. But then like you get into the replay, right? Right out of the replay, you see Larssen just hitting top turret. Caps walks up to him without ult, just CCs him under the turret. He just takes like 2 turret shots and just dies. Like he's like 100 HP before Caps has to actually ult on him and kill him. And I was like, come on, man. Like we're not just getting solo killed now, but the guy that came to lane 2 levels down. Like not only did he die in that first fight, and Caps had cleanse that game. He didn't have TP. So it's like when he dies in the jungle at level 2, level 3, horrible for him. He can't TP back to the lane. Then he tries to move to the bot, the second bot skirmish where they ended up doing that dive, where Rogue ended up doing that dive. And Larssen just like is looking at the guy. He's level 3 when you're level 5. On top of that, Larssen ulted right in front of Caps. He must have just been looking top. But that's like a kind of a sign to me of panic, is like you're so tunnel visioned, right? He goes to ulti top at level 7 where they're going to just like win the play massively. And when he does it, Caps is literally sitting on a pink ward. Like in his vision, like Caps is autoing the pink ward. He's like, I'm killing this shit like before you go top. And then he just starts casting his ult. And Ari just charms him. Ari just charms him out of his ult. And then they just like go back to lane. It's like, come on, man, like use your advantage. Like, come on, this is your game. That's why I was saying if Rogue won that game, I'd be much happier with the finals. I would have been like, you know what? Rogue was just outclassed. They had a couple bad drafts, and they just got beat by a team that was really popping off. That was the moment where I was like, game 3 was the moment where I was like, dude, this is just not like, you guys are better than this. You give this lead to like most teams, they're going to beat you. And especially when you look at like the draft, it's not like they have some like, mega scaling draft where they're like, they have a Zaya Ari with like an Orin top. Like, it's not like a Trundle. And the other team has Jinx Jace. Like the Jinx Jace team is up 4K and they're not able to do anything. It's not even like close to competitive. That was to me like really disappointing. That's when I started feeling like, damn, this is not the final I wanted to see. I wanted to see a final between two teams that were competitive. And we used to get them. Like, if you think about 2019, that was when G2 was at their absolute peak. That's when they went to World Finals. They won MSI. That was like the best team, in my opinion, I don't even think in my opinion, the best team that Europe has ever produced, right? And even Fnatic was playing those teams 2 5-game series in the winner bracket final and then in the final. Like, they were actually giving their all. And it feels like Fnatic and Rogue kind of just rolled over and died. I didn't see like the fire in them. I didn't see the fight. It just felt like they didn't fight. They just went out like busters. I don't know.
Youngbuck, what is your take overall on Larssen? Because on the one hand, when he does really well, I'm always arguing that people never give him his flowers and his credit. But I will say, Larssen, games like these are the reason why they don't give you the flowers, mate. 'Cause unfortunately, it makes people at the end feel like they can't rely on you and you're a loser. Because the problem I have with him, Youngbuck, is he's too fragile. He either carries and is amazing, or it's like this, like where's the sort of B and C game? Like it just drops apart, it seems like.
I feel like he's actually the most stable, but also the least creative, like top tier mid laner. If you compare him to like of Caps or Humanoid or VTO, I think if you put him on a Victor or Oriana, he will probably that is kind of his role within the team. And I think if you put him on more creative champions like TF, he can play them, but I don't think it really suits him too well. So I think he's a top 3 player. I think mechanically he may even be the best or second best. It's just that he lacks a lot of creativity, and therefore it makes it a little bit more difficult for him to win championships, because you need a little bit of oomph that a player like Caps has, for example, and you especially want this from your mid laner.
It's the reason
the
why
winning mentality that Mickey X has. God damn it.
I mean, you're joking, but I agree. Like, that basically is it. Even though people do stress that too much on all those American talks, just like killer instinct or like clutch gene, like, there's a grain of truth in what they're saying. And the problem I have with Larssen is this. I've seen this happen in Counter-Strike before. There's players who have amazing raw aim in Counter-Strike, but then you look at the style of play, and dude, they play like conservative as though they were like a player with shit aim. And you just think like, dude, if I had your skills, I'd try and be the best player in the world. Like, I'd be going ham. Like, I think the same thing when I watch him, because I watch him and on all the champions he's clearly comfortable on, he looks clean as fuck. His mechanics are awesome. He gets everything, all the fucking combos are there. But I agree, like, there's something, like, I can't really, even though he did do it in the Fnatic series, you can't rely on this guy to like 1v9 the game if it's in this shitter. That's the problem. And that is what you normally want from A, mid laner, and B, superstar players, certainly. You know, you want the guy who can just drag you out of a loss, and that's definitely hasn't been Larssen's game thus far. The other player that we have to talk, like, the problem is on Rogue, spoiler, they all pretty much played bad. I'd be hard pressed to find anyone who looked like they played good. But we'll go in order of the players who fucked up. Obviously, we have to talk about Trymbi, because in the same ways he was one of the reasons a lot of us thought they might be the champions. Youngbuck, underwhelming finals performance, right? I mean, this guy just felt like he just died a million times. That's all I already saw.
Yeah, I think Trymbi is a player that is most feared for his laning and not too much for his roaming, and that didn't really show within the entire series.
Lane.
Yes, exactly. And he's probably the best laning support. So if he doesn't win lane, then... And it's also Rogue just stylistically. They really play towards bot lane as their win condition. So if they don't perform, they're just never going to win. Which again makes their loss with the 0-3 flag even worse, because this was actually their playstyle, getting the lead through bot lane and then still not being able to finish. It's very disappointing.
Yeah, it's super disappointing. I think that's kind of where we differ on like the red side thing, because from my perspective, I was thinking like, oh, if they get red side and they get counter pick support, instead of it enabling mid jungle, I just feel like, yeah, I mean, it can just enable your lane. You can get the counter pick support. You can just get something that counters them. So if they're forced to blind pick a Nautilus or something like that, then you can just be on the Renata side, and you can or you could play like a Lulu or like any of the picks that are really good. I mean, I think one thing that Trymbi plays really well are the range supports. I think he's one of the best range support players in Europe. Like they played a lot of Caitlyn Lux before. They played Nami Lucian to varying levels of success. He played Lulu. Obviously, it wasn't the right time for it in the game one, but I wanted to see them enabled to actually win because it just felt like they were just losing the bot lane matchups. Like, I don't know how the matchups are supposed to. I'm not gonna say I'm an expert in bot lane matchups, but it seems to me like Nautilus Jinx versus Renata Xayah just seems like it's a counter, at least in lane, because if you're like, what do? You hook either of them, they just turn on you and kill you. Like, what? I don't see what the Nautilus is supposed to do in this type of lane. And yeah, to me, it was just really disappointing that they weren't able to win. And I think that's kind of like one of the things that we talked about here with Larssen being a choker. I felt like that was kind of something that Flockett showed the opposite of. It seemed like Flockett played better in these series than he did in the last ones. Well, yes. I mean, he played better in a couple of in the Misfits one, but in the Vitality series, it wasn't the best. And I felt like Flockett actually stepped up and, like all the players leveled up, but that's something that's nice to watch. It's like a rookie that actually has the confidence. Might go down to the team chemistry, might come down to the mentality, how comfortable they are within that environment. But it seemed like he actually they just stepped up. I mean, if Targamas and Flockett are winning bot lane and BB's winning top and your mid jungler just ahead, it's like, yeah, that's a 3-0 right there. Like, where are you winning? Where do you have any advantage on the map?
Yeah, indeed. I'll also say as well, if you listen to the mic check, mate, you can just tell by Trymbi's voice he was shook as fuck in this final. Like you could, if you watch the mic check when they win against Fnatic, he was making like lots of great calls. He was telling people to calm down during fights, like play the right pacing. In these fights, he sounds panicked as fuck, mate. And you can even see by his gameplay, he's doing that shit where when he's talking, it looks like he has less control over his bloody character. Like, I hate that, mate. That kills you inside when you see that, and you're like, because that means you've got major things to like. Look, to be fair, he's still a rookie to me. He's only played 3 splits for fuck's sake, but that stuff doesn't come easy. Like, that's the hardest earned stuff in the game, is like being comfortable in pressure moments, being able to make calls when it's hectic. That's why, by the way, when you have those qualities like the aforementioned Perkses of the world, you can write your check for the next few years, mate. You are just worth your weight in gold, right, Youngbuck?
Absolutely. And if I remember correctly, like Trymbi has had this. There has been talks behind the scenes that Trymbi indeed has some issues playing under pressure, and that he becomes very vocal, but in all the wrong ways on stage.
Right,
Ali thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like he starts to really repeat a lot of useless things. Ali, target selection, etc. I hope he works on that and sees that as an issue, because I think he could be part of the next generation supports when Hilly and Mickey definitively hand over the torch. Yes. So I hope he also listens to this show and then actually knows that people are talking about this. So there's teammates leaking this, there's staff leaking this, but he's a player that should be part of the next generation.
That was just funny the way he said it. Like, I just hope that he watches the show and he knows that his team's talking shit about him. Like,
I hope he finds out his girlfriend's cheating on him. I kicked his dog up his ass and I fucked his mom. Like, fucking hell, all right. And I hope he tunes in. Yeah, bloody hell.
Oh my god, it's gonna be a bad time if he tunes in, man. Like, I don't know if you wish that on him, but okay. Like, that's an interesting place to go.
I definitely agree with that sentiment as well. Here's the good news: if you're Trymbi, is mate, you are this close to actually becoming, like Youngbuck says, one of the all-time great European support players. You could be in the vein of the Mithy, Yellow Star, Mickey X, Hillersang. Like, we're talking about the best ever player. Like, the skill set's there. You can see it. So to me, if I were him, especially because here's the other thing. If you're someone like Odoana, yeah, you've had years of this suffering. This is still early in the game if you're Trymbi, mate. Just look at Perks' career. If you put this behind you and you win like the next split or you're the MVP, people will forget that you ever choked, mate. You'll just become a legend at that point in time. So I would, as bad as it is, I would actually take heart of the fact that I'm only that far away.
Definitely. And like the Perks thing, right? Like the Perks choked at his first couple international events. Yes. People would just flame him for how hard he was choking. I mean, obviously, like, it was a little bit overstated because of the vacation
and stuff. Yeah, sure.
And because he was like super cocky and he has that smug European mid laner's face, you know. So everyone was just like ready to hate on him. He just has that quality that just makes people root for their fucking failure. But I mean, look, no one talks about Perks being a fucking choker now. Like, if you just start delivering, then we don't talk about this on talk shows anymore. We're not going to be just still calling. Remember when Youngbuck told you your girlfriend was cheating on you on that show? Like, we're not going to be doing the callbacks and stuff like that. So
exactly. Oh, the other person I thought we should focus on, then we'll go to the other teams. We'll talk about Fnatic, right? The last person, just because we've again, he's been such a topic of conversation for Rogue, is obviously Malrang. He was the guy who came in this year, such a night and day contrast to Inspired. You see how it seems like it's brought new life to some of the players and the style. But the problem is, I've actually noticed this, right? As much as people don't want it to be because they think it's too reductive, Youngbuck, they hate the idea that anyone says like young Malrang was in any way like figured out. I don't think it's that he's figured out because I think that sounds like, you know, he's just he does a basic bitch thing and you just know what he's doing. I think it's just more that what he does can't work forever. You can't get away with it in every game. You can't always go with a fucking wonky ass build in runes and just get 10 extra ganks off and win the game. Like, I will say in the final he looked worse, but I also think like some of this was due for me. Like eventually he was going to have a bad game. And by the way, surely Jankos is the player to expose you if you've got any dodginess in your game. What did you think of Malrang?
I think throughout the split, he was a player that was very close to how he played in scrims. He was very sacrificial and very active on the map. And you usually see this from both teams in scrims. But then when his stage, usually both junglers, both teams play much more passive, and Malrang wasn't and was really reaping the benefits from that. But you could see that as more pressure builds up, even Malrang started to have less and less impact on the games, and Rogue became a slower team, and that's where his playstyle caught up to him because he couldn't do it under the most pressure there was that the LSE could create, basically.
What did you think, Dom?
So my take on him was that I don't think he was doing that much of that like super sinner stuff that everyone was talking about. He wasn't
doing anything, dude. He was just chilling in this game.
Even last week when he was getting all those ganks off, those were ganks that were coming like within his clear. Like it was coming within his natural clear that the lanes were set up in ways where he didn't have to like randomly run across the map, or he didn't have to like base on top side and then see his bot camps respawning and then run back top anyway just to get the gank off to hit these like really crazy timings. In that series of Rogue vs Fnatic in the final 3 games, a lot of the kills were just coming within his clear because his teammates were just outlaning him. Like Odo would just have the wave in a spot where it's like, this Cyan has no TP and is just like pushed up to my fucking turret, and I have the wave frozen so he can't actually crash it. And Malrang would just go and take a free kill. In the game that we talked about last week, the Trundle game, for example, he did a standard Trundle clear where he just did 4 camps and then he just goes mid, gets a kill. Then he exits through mid to topside, so they know he's topside, and then he just walks top and gets a kill. So it's not like he's doing like this crazy jungle pathing where it's like, holy shit, like how did this guy fucking end up here? It's like, you know how he ended up there. Like he walked across your fucking screen. Like that's how he ended up there. So for me, like I think he was just playing like pretty like just standard good jungling throughout.
Would you liked him to flip the switch and go psycho? Would you have liked him to have done that?
I don't think that he. So this is maybe this is just jungle bias because I'm a jungler and I see the game through a jungle mindset. But a lot of the times I'm looking at these games and I don't feel like he has like great opportunities because his lanes are not in the same states as they were before. Like his lanes are just not gankable, so he can't really do the things that he was doing before. And I mean, sure, like there was some games where he was spending way too much time on pink wards. He just kept on not walking into bushes and he was seen and then teams were respecting him, but he just didn't have like the options to make these plays. I mean, if you have a Lucian mid versus an Ahri and you're playing Xin Zhao and your Lucian dies early, it's like that lane is like, you're not visiting that lane anymore. Like that's not happening. Where are you going to go? You're going to go gank the fucking Tryndamere top, the Ghost Flash Tryndamere top with Xin Zhao? I mean, good luck. Like maybe if Odo freezes it for you at like level 4 and the Tryndamere has to walk up, maybe then you have the opportunities. His bot lane was just losing a lot of lanes. Like I don't think that he can do that much in these games when the lanes are playing out like this. He's just not having the windows. Like I'm sure he's looking at the lanes, but he just doesn't see the play. I don't see the play either, and I'm watching it from third-party perspective, so I don't know how he's supposed to see the plays.
If for some reason Youngbuck in the summer, again, purely speculation, imagine we went to a meta where it was farm junglers again. Would that affect Malrang? Do you think it would cripple him at all?
I think it would cripple Rogue.
Right.
But that's primarily because I see Rogue as a team that has very stable solo lanes, but there's not a lot of creativity, which it's okay, but then you need that spark from the jungle. You need a little bit of craziness, and Malrang does have that. But if it becomes a farming meta, I don't see how he's going to be the spark for Rogue as a team, and I felt like, if anything, Comp also choked quite a bit, especially in the last game on the Jinx. I felt when I see him not auto Ahri in the fight around there,
he's so scared. He's so scared.
Yeah, he had some fights where he did no damage. It's true. Yeah.
So if you have a support that's really focused on strong laning, you have very stable but not creative solo lanes. I don't see how they're gonna do in a farming jungle meta. It sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. What they need is there's a player right now that's playing in NA who's like really good at farm style, plays for Evil Geniuses, I think that guy would be
See what he's
perfect for
doing
that
there?
team.
Really?
Yeah. So, potential MVP of one of the
Okay,
splits.
right.
They need that guy to come back on the team, and then maybe that team would succeed. Maybe get an 80 carry from the same region.
And by the way, I'll tell you what, obviously this is a joke, but if he ever did come back, the first thing he'd say is he'd just go and thank every laner. Like, you guys are actually really good laners. I never really appreciated you until I went to NA and played with those NA players. Now I understand. Yeah, you actually are fucking amazing laners. My bad. Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.